2 weeks ago, the Canadian Supreme Court handed down one of the most astoundingly arrogant judicial rulings that I've ever heard of, when its 9 justices told the Canadian government that it had 12 months to officially change Canadian law to legalise euthanasia. This ruling sees 9 unelected officials forcing a contentious piece of legislation on an entire nation, despite the fact that the elected government of that country has previously and relatively recently voted down such a law change. I can understand judges having a lack of understanding and awareness about the dangers of legalised euthanasia, and this ignorance resulting in a ruling that might require the Canadian government to go back and revisit this issue. But to actually take things a step further and introduce contentious legislation from the judiciary is little more than blatant judicial activism. What makes this ruling even more unbelievable is the paper-thin premise on which it has been built, that the desire of an individual to commit suicide somehow outweighs the state's obligation to protect the vulnerable. To call such a premise selfish and unjust in its total disregard for the vulnerable members of the Canadian community, such as the sick, the disabled and the elderly, is a massive understatement. Here's my prediction. If the Canadian government meekly bows to this undemocratic judicial imposition, then within 20 years the Canadian medical establishment will routinely be killing patients without their consent. It's pretty simple really. If you accept the flawed notion that killing patients can actually be a good and therapeutically beneficial thing for them, then consent quickly becomes a far less important secondary concern. Currently, doctors have to obtain consent before carrying out procedures, even life-saving ones, on their patients. Yet if a patient arrives at hospital and the doctor deems them to be in need of a beneficial therapy that they can't consent to, it is generally considered perfectly acceptable for the doctor to actually administer the treatment anyway. Now imagine this same scenario, except this time the unconscious patient arrives at a hospital where ending the lives of patients with lethal injections is considered a good and beneficial thing. What happens to that patient when the doctor decides that euthanasia would be the most beneficial therapy for that person? If you think this could never ever happen, you clearly haven't read the wealth of information and research available which shows that in places like the Netherlands, non-consensual euthanasia is happening every year and it's claiming many lives. What the Netherlands and Belgium prove is that it is extremely naive to think that so-called legal safeguards will ever stop vulnerable patients being coerced or outright killed without consent. These jurisdictions also show that once you accept killing for one reason, it very quickly escalates and you start finding lots of reasons to end the lives of patients as well. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next time on 3 Minutes or Less. You, I'm talking to you. You need to go to our YouTube channel at lifetv.net.nz and become a subscriber. Then after that, you need to jump on Facebook and give us a like on our Facebook page too. Every week we're going to be posting a brand new episode of 3 Minutes or Less for you to enjoy and then share with your friends. See you next time.